Alright, got me a new shirt, a new scenery. Something still doesn't feel complete. I know. That's better. Much more gothic. And with this gothic black and white setting and the Jack Skellington t-shirt, I can finally talk about something I really enjoy. You know, Tim Burton has certainly come a long way since he was an animator for Disney. I'm sure anyone who watched his directorial debut, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, would never imagine that he would, 5 years later, pretty much work on the live-action Batman movie with Michael Keaton of all people, and it was a success. I've made it no secret that I'm a big fan of Tim Burton. He's one of my favorite directors next to Steven Spielberg, Quentin Tarantino, and Guillermo del Toro, and Paul King. He's definitely one of my favorites. And I can definitely say that this is one of my favorite live-action Batman movies. I'm always going to favor this over Joaquin Phoenix's Joker any day. At least this Joker is somewhat comic accurate, even if he didn't murder Bruce Wayne's parents in the comics. Now, you would think, with a guy like Tim Burton, who's best known for being dark, twisted, gothic, and weird, that a lot of his films would be all rated R. Actually, not quite. Most of Tim Burton's movies have ventured into either PG or PG-13 territory. He's not exactly a gorehound the way Damien Leone and the late but great George A. Romero are gorehounds. And of course, when I call Damien Leone and George A. Romero gorehounds, I mean it in the most loving manner possible, because most of their films have great quality. Damien Leone, I think, is probably going to have a very promising career, in my opinion. But anyway, with Tim Burton, well, he has directed some R-rated movies. And so, in honor of his comeback with Beetlejuice, I'm going to talk about Tim Burton's R-rated movies. Here they are. Let's get to it.
Ed Wood is a 1994 biographical comedy-drama film released on September 30th of that year. This was the first film directed by Tim Burton to ever receive an R rating. But whereas Burton's later films would receive R ratings due to violence, Ed Wood was rated R for a mostly strong profanity. Ed Wood marks the second time Johnny Depp collaborated with Burton after they first collaborated on Edward Scissorhands, and is written by Scott Alexander and Larry Karaszewski. Other people who co-starred in this film are the late Martin Landau, Sarah Jessica Parker, Patricia Arquette, Bill Murray, Lisa Marie, and...
this guy?
Now, for the modern YouTube viewer who doesn't know who Ed Wood was, allow me to explain. Now, the real-life Ed Wood was a filmmaker and sometimes actor who was known for directing such low-budget films as Glenn or Glenda, Bride of the Monster, and Plan 9 from Outer Space. Ed Wood's movies were known for aesthetics that came across as unintentionally funny, technical continuity errors, use of poorly matched stock footage, eccentric casts with questionable acting choices, poorly executed stories, and poorly written dialogue.
You see? You're stupid minds! Stupid!
Many of Ed Wood's movies were critical and financial failures, and Ed Wood gained a reputation for being considered one of the worst directors of his time. In fact, a lot of Ed Wood's movies are in the public domain due to their copyright licenses not being renewed. But many of Wood's movies have gained a bit of a cult following, often gaining a reputation for being considered so bad it's good. In fact, modern directors like John Waters and Don Mancini have paid homage to Ed Wood through their films and television shows. Wood was also known for collaborating with Dracula star Bela Lugosi during his last years before his death in 1956. Wood was a bit of a supporter of cross-dressing and transvestitism, becoming an icon of the modern LGBT community. In this biographical film, the movie focuses on Ed Wood as he makes most of the films that I've mentioned, along with his friendship with Bela Lugosi, played by Martin Landau, and also his relationships with Dolores Fuller and Kathy O'Hara, portrayed by Sarah Jessica Parker and Patricia Arquette respectively, even if the film does take some creative liberties. The film received rave reviews from various critics, thinking that it was a great film, praising Depp's performance as Wood and also Landau's portrayal of Lugosi. Unfortunately, despite the critical acclaim, Ed Wood bombed at the box office, grossing only $13.8 million against an $18 million budget. Despite this financial failure, Ed Wood received many accolades at award ceremonies. Martin Landau won an Oscar for his Best Supporting Actor for his performance as Bela Lugosi, and Rick Baker won an Oscar for Best Makeup for his work on the movie alongside V. Neil and Yolanda Tusiang. Fun fact, Ed Wood was Rick Baker's third Oscar win, and his co-worker V. Neil also won Oscars for her work on Beetlejuice and Mrs. Doubtfire. Ed Wood is also known for being one of the few times music composer Danny Elfman didn't compose a score for Burton. The reason Elfman didn't collaborate with Burton this time around was due to a creative fallout. This time around, Ed Wood was composed by Howard Shore, a music composer best known for writing the original Saturday Night Live theme song and for composing music to this little fantasy trilogy known as Lord of the Rings. You know, I remember first seeing Ed Wood around 6 or so years ago, and I actually did enjoy watching it. Whereas any other mean-spirited director would have ridiculed Wood and negatively portray him as a bumbling idiot who didn't know what the hell he was doing, I mean, come on, that would be sort of redundant to ridicule a person who's already been ridiculed enough. Burton and Depp found a way to make Ed seem like a sympathetic person. Before he was cast in Edward Scissorhands, Johnny Depp was often known for being typecast as the pretty boy in most shows like 21 Jump Street. But when he's working with Burton, Johnny Depp gets an opportunity to show off his range as an actor, portraying eccentric and misunderstood characters who are easy to sympathize with. And Ed Wood is a fine example of this trope done right. Although Wood's films aren't great, Ed is portrayed as a well-meaning person with a vision and heart, and that heart is shown with his relationship with Bela Lugosi. Even if the on-screen portrayal of Bela Lugosi isn't 100% accurate, Martin Landau puts his heart into portraying the horror actor, helping us sympathize with him as he tries to overcome his personal demons. The film has great comedic moments and great dramatic moments too, and if you're a fan of movie directors like Ed Wood, then I would recommend watching the biographical movie. I guarantee you won't regret watching it. Perhaps you might get something out of it. And don't worry about Danny Elfman. He and Tim eventually made peace with each other and became friends again. Sleepy Hollow is a 1999 supernatural horror film that was released on November 19th of that year with a screenplay by Andrew Kevin Walker, the story developed by him and Kevin Yeager. For those who don't know, Kevin Yeager is best known for his practical makeup effects work and has helped with the makeup of Freddy Krueger and has also designed the Chucky doll for the titular franchise. The 1999 Sleepy Hollow movie is a loose adaptation of the 1820 short story known as The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, which was written by Washington Irving. This is actually the third live-action adaptation of the Washington Irving story after a 1922 silent film starring Will Rogers and a 1980 TV movie starring Jeff Goldblum. Now, let me tell you, Ed Wood was rated R for strong language. Sleepy Hollow, on the other hand, is rated R for graphic horror violence and gore, and for a scene of sexuality, so this adaptation is not the Disney adaptation with Bing Crosby. This film marks the third collaboration between Burton and Johnny Depp, and is also the first collaboration between Tim and the late but great Christopher Lee. How awesome is that? The film also stars Christina Ricci, Miranda Richardson, the late Michael Gambon, Casper Van Dien, Ian McDiarmid, the late Michael Goff, and...
Ugh! You again? You're making this awkward for me.
Lisa Marie, and Christopher Walken and Ray Park, sharing the role of the Headless Horseman. Johnny Depp plays the main protagonist, Police Constable Ichabod Crane. He's sent from New York to the titular town of Sleepy Hollow to investigate a series of brutal and mysterious murders, which are supposedly being done by an alleged Headless Horseman. At first, Ichabod thinks, oh pish posh, a headless ghost on a horse killing people? Hogwash! But soon Ichabod will learn that the supposed Headless Horseman is much more real than he realizes. Now, Sleepy Hollow was originally meant to be a low-budget slasher film with makeup effects artist Kevin Yeager set to direct, but disagreements with the film's distributor Paramount resulted in Yeager being demoted to just a prosthetic makeup designer while Tim took the realm as director. And like most of Tim Burton's movies, which are known for being gothic, dark, twisted, and weird, Sleepy Hollow has a dark sense of humor, like some of Burton's films. When the film premiered, it received positive reviews from critics who praised the performances, Burton's direction, screenplay, the musical score composed by Elfman, the visual effects, and the film's entire atmosphere. On a budget that ranged between $70 million and $100 million, the film was a financial success unlike Ed Wood, grossing $207.1 million. Sleepy Hollow was also nominated for 2 Oscars, Best Cinematography by Emmanuel Lubezki, and Best Costume Design by frequent Burton collaborator Colleen Atwood. Colleen has been a frequent collaborator with Burton. Her first collaboration was working on the costume designs for Edward Scissorhands. Sleepy Hollow won the Academy Award for Best Art Direction courtesy of Peter Young and Rick Heinrichs. Given all this popularity, what's my opinion about Sleepy Hollow?
Okay, if you want my honest opinion, I've actually never seen Sleepy Hollow. The only version of Sleepy Hollow I've ever watched is the 1940s Disney animated film Ichabod and Mr. Toad. That's the only reason I'm even familiar with Sleepy Hollow and the Headless Horseman. So I've never watched Sleepy Hollow. I think it's one of the few Tim Burton movies I haven't watched. I probably should, so because of this, I really don't have an opinion regarding Sleepy Hollow. Although it does look great, and the digital effects to remove Ray Park and Christopher Walken's head to make the Headless Horseman literally headless, those seem like very cool effects. Like I said, I don't really have an opinion about the Sleepy Hollow movie directed by Tim Burton due to the fact that I've never watched it. But after this video gets published, who knows? Maybe I might watch it this Halloween season and, form my own opinion about Sleepy Hollow. But anyway, now that I've gotten that elephant out of the room, I can now talk about Tim Burton's final R-rated movie.
Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street, is a 2007 musical slasher film. That's right, Sweeney Todd is both a horror slasher and a musical. How could this be so? Well, Sweeney Todd is actually a literary story that goes way back to 1846. The premise for Sweeney Todd is quite basic. Todd is a barber from Fleet Street who murders his customers at barbershops and gives their corpses to his partner in crime, Mrs. Lovett, whom she bakes the victim's flesh into meat pies. The tale of Sweeney Todd has been retold many times in various forms of media, being portrayed by the likes of Sir Ben Kingsley and Ray Winstone. One of the most unlikely adaptations was a Broadway musical by Hugh Wheeler and the late but great Stephen Sondheim. Screenwriter John Logan helped adapt the Sondheim musical, and somehow Tim Burton, Sweeney Todd, and an R rating are a match made in heaven for this horror musical. It just might be Tim's most violent movie ever, and I say that as a compliment. Seriously, this film is rated R for graphic bloody violence, and it earns that R rating. The film stars Johnny Depp, Helena Bonham Carter, the late but great Alan Rickman, Timothy Spall, and Sacha Baron Cohen, among others. Whereas the Penny Dreadful serial stories portray Todd as a basic killer at a barbershop, the Sondheim musical actually fleshes Sweeney Todd out. No pun intended on the flesh part. It actually gives Sweeney Todd a justified reason for why he kills people in his barbershop. In the film, Johnny Depp plays Sweeney Todd, while Helena Bonham Carter plays Mrs. Lovett. In the musical and movie adaptation, Todd was originally a barber known as Benjamin Barker, who was falsely framed for a crime he didn't commit, and was exiled to Australia by the corrupt Judge Turpin, played by Rickman. Why did Turpin do this? Because this jackass was infatuated with Benjamin's wife Lucy. Then Turpin raped her and stole their daughter Joanna, adopting her as his ward. So yeah, Sweeney Todd may not be a good guy, but Judge Turpin is a fucking monster, played to perfection by the late but great Alan Rickman. Barker comes back to London adopting the name Sweeney Todd, vowing to get his revenge against Judge Turpin. Todd starts committing serial murders on his customers, and with the help of his accomplice, Mrs. Lovett, they process the corpses into meat pies. Like you do. Now, Stephen Sondheim may not have been directly involved, but he was extensively consulted during production. This film is actually one of the few Tim Burton movies to not have Danny Elfman as the film's composer, because Sondheim himself actually composes the music for this adaptation. How awesome is that? Released on December 3rd of 2007, Sweeney Todd grossed $153.4 million against a $50 million budget. The film received massive critical acclaim, receiving praise for the performances of the cast, musical numbers, costume and set design, and faithfulness to the musical. The film received 2 Academy Award nominations, Best Costume Design for Colleen Atwood, and a Best Actor nomination for Johnny Depp, and the film won the Oscar for Best Art Direction, given to Dante Ferretti and Francesca Lo Schiavo. Now, unlike Sleepy Hollow, I can definitely say that I have indeed watched the Sweeney Todd movie, and I have James A. Janice of Dead Meat to thank for that. I've made it no secret that I am a big fan of the Dead Meat YouTube channel. I never miss a kill count. I remember watching the kill count to Sweeney Todd and found it entertaining and informative. Watching the kill count actually made me want to watch Sweeney Todd despite knowing the outcome, and I don't regret it for a moment. Say what you will about the films Tim Burton has directed throughout the 2000s decade, I personally love the Sweeney Todd movie. I think it's one of his best. I never would have imagined that Tim Burton directing an R-rated horror musical would actually be great, but when Tim Burton works on a musical, he's at his absolute best. Johnny Depp gives a great performance as the titular villain, and I personally think his singing is so sexy. Hiring him to play the character was a gamble, and the gamble paid off, because Johnny Depp sounds sexy when he sings. Yeah, Sweeney Todd is a killer, but you actually feel bad for him, and Depp gives you a reason to sympathize with him while also being disgusted by his actions. Sweeney Todd is almost an example of the phrase, "Why should I apologize for being a monster? Nobody apologized for making me a monster." Carter and Rickman are also great as Mrs. Lovett and Judge Turpin respectively, and their singing is also really good. Now, I love Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, but I understand if it's not for everyone. And if that film made you think Tim Burton lost his touch as a filmmaker, Sweeney Todd is a reminder of why Burton was considered such a brilliant filmmaker in the first place. It's one of his best. If you love horror and you love musicals and you love horror musicals, I fully recommend Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. You'll have a gory good time with this slasher musical.
Have you noticed that all 3 of these R-rated films I've talking about have all won Oscars somehow? That's quite an accomplishment. You know, when Tim Burton is given a chance to really shine as a director, he's amazing. I mean, I understand if you don't like his other films like Alice in Wonderland. That's understandable, but yeah, Tim Burton can still be a brilliant director when he's at his most weirdest, especially as demonstrated with Beetlejuice. I look forward to whatever films Tim Burton directs next. Anyway, thank you for watching my discussion of Tim Burton's R-rated movies. I've really had a lot of fun getting to talk about all these as someone that loves the process of filmmaking. And don't worry, eventually I will go back to reviewing Logan, Deadpool 2, and Hulk vs. Wolverine. I just needed this break. Anyway, hope you have a happy Halloween and oh, come here. I got something important I need to tell you.